Okay, I just want to officially welcome everyone. This is the third class to our Bashert Lounge Lounge and Learn mini-series. We have Jessica Fass, who is our matchmaker out in LA. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we have Andrea Werner, who is one of our Bashert Lounge's matchmakers. She's a volunteer. We're all volunteer-run, very dedicated team. And tonight we're going to be talking about deal breakers versus preferences, the eternal question, and how to grow and learn about what is going to be an on-target match for you. Without further ado, Andrea, are you ready for me to share the presentation?
Sure, go ahead. And like Sam said, if you guys have a question as we go or something, a topic you'd like to discuss, just feel free to put it in the chat and she'll make sure to make note of it and mention it.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, here we go.
Great. Okay, so thank you everybody for coming. We're really excited to talk about this. We really think that at times, people really struggle with this idea of deal breakers versus preferences and how do you figure out which is which for you. And so we really just wanted to try to help you through that process and review it a little bit more in detail to see if we could help you with this aspect of dating. Okay, so just a little, checking in on what we're going to try to cover tonight. So we really want to try to give you tools to identify what is most important to you, because that's what you're thinking about when you're thinking about deal breakers and preferences. You're trying to decide, when I'm looking into somebody and I'm trying to find a match for myself, what aspects am I looking for that are really important to me that are going to make a good match? So then once you're able to do that and think about what's most important to you, then if somebody says to you, hey, I have this friends, yada, 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 or you get sent a profile, then the question is, how do you know if that person's on target? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, and how to, really think about, is this a deal breaker? Is this a preference? Could I be open to something like this? And then there is this idea of sometimes people have this image in their mind. And how, when you have that image in your mind, do you know if that's really the right thing for you? Because sometimes it's just like, wow, I really want somebody that, looks like this, versus you might meet somebody who has a couple of different features and characteristics. And sometimes that's really hard to parse out. And so thinking about deal breakers and preferences helps with that as well. And then when do you give someone a chance, or when do you pass on a dating opportunity? A lot of people sometimes think any opportunity that comes my way, I'm just going to try to take it. I'm going to try to go for it. Is that always the right approach for you? Or is there a different way to look at that? So before we start talking about these topics, it's so important that we get on the same page about the words that we're talking about, so that we're talking about the same thing. So the first one is deal breakers. And when we talk about deal breakers, we're talking about what is an absolute not for you. When you hear about it, when you look at a profile, you're saying, look, I really appreciate the thought, but that person is 100% not for me, just by something that was mentioned. So an example of that is if someone doesn't live in the United States and that's somewhere where you want to stay and they're not willing to relocate and you're not willing to do long distance dating, so then that's an absolute no for you and you have to move on. Another one might be that if you're looking for somebody of a certain observance level and you really don't want to change in your observance level and you're not open to that. But sometimes those things can also be preferences. So it's really a personal thing. Now, as I said, talking about preferences. So those are our maybes. Maybe that could work for me. Maybe it couldn't. I'm open to it. I'm open to somebody who has kids. I'm open to someone who's been divorced before. I'm open to someone who's a little bit more on the quiet side. Or the example I have written here is I'm open to someone who's taller than me. So these are things that aren't really gonna be a deal breaker in the long term. And then what's really important when you're thinking about deal breakers versus preferences is thinking about your values. And values are must-haves. Those are the things that are going to keep your relationship together. They're going to help form your relationship. And so you really need to be making sure that you and your future partner are in line with your values and have the same values. And so that's going to help you determine which are your deal breakers and which are your preferences. And so an example of a value is wanting to have a really big family life and spend a lot of time with family. That means you might not want somebody who has a job where they have to fly around the country all the time, who's not really interested in going to family events because you really value that quality time with family life. So now that we have those terms listed out, so what are you looking for in a partner and how do you figure that out? So one question that I like to ask is, what do I want my future home or family to look like, right? Because what you're trying to build with your partner is your future home and family. So it's important to think about that before you go and start looking for somebody, and then try to figure out, how do I find those characteristics and find somebody who wants those same things. Another great question is, what qualities do I appreciate in my close friends? I always have people ask me, how do I know what kind of a person I'm looking for? What personality suits me best? And I always say, look at your best friends. Look at the people who you've instantly clicked with, who you've been able to get through the tough times together and had a long-term relationship, because at the end of the day, you want your partner to be your best friend. And so why not look at those relationships you've already had a long time building to see, wow, I really work best with people who are a little bit more on the outgoing side because I'm a little bit more introverted. I really work with people who are more upfront and can tell me what's going on, versus, I really appreciate somebody who's funny, but that's not somebody I want to be, cracking jokes in my ear all the time. That's great for just a friend, but that's not somebody I want to be my best friend. Another thing that I like to offer that singles think about is, what do I admire about other people's relationships? We can learn a lot from other people, and both in just looking and seeing what do I appreciate about their relationship, as well as what do I want to bring in my relationship and what don't I want to bring in my relationship. Some people like to always go everywhere with their partner and don't really have any interest in doing things on their own. And some people want to be a lot more independent. And so you can kind of see that in other people's relationships, and your parents, your family, your friends' relationships. You can kind of think about, how do you want your relationship to look like? And how do you find somebody who matches that? Next is, what do I need to feel supported and like part of a team? Because, right, we're talking about a partner. That's someone who's part of a team with you. That's the person that you're going to be spending the rest of your life with, and you don't want to be carrying that bag of burden the rest of your life. So everyone feels supported in a different way. One way to look at those things is things like the love languages. But you can just think about, when I come home from a long day at work, do I want my partner to be somebody who I can lean on and talk to and have a glass of wine with? Do I want my partner to be someone who had prepared a meal for me? Or do I want my partner to kind of be doing their own thing and just checking in with me every once in a while and saying like, hey, how'd that go for you? Is that good enough for you? And again, to that values point, what values are most important to you? We really think it's just so important to really parse out what your values are and keep those at the forefront when you're trying to think of deal breakers and preferences, and when you're looking for your partner. And so I listed out some values that I often hear singles mention, such as dependability, open-mindedness, work-life balance. And so those are things that you want to be, asking questions about, both to the people who are offering you suggestions for a partner, as well as to your partner themselves. These are good, dating questions to ask about, so you can try to figure out if that person's a match for you. And so with all that being said, now that we have like a little bit of a better picture of how we might think about figuring out what's important to us, Jessica's going to help us figure out what are deal breakers and what are preferences by looking at what she calls the big six.
I was muted, sorry. I didn't get very far, don't worry. Thank you, Andrea, so much. That was an amazing presentation, so informative. And, we think it's common sense, some of the stuff, but like we forget it. And It's not all common sense, actually. We do really need to be told that the most important thing is to find the best friend that you can grow old with, and that you can laugh at the same jokes, and just really feels that has your back. So that's the most important thing I want to tell everybody today. So, so I'm a professional matchmaker. People come to me every day of the week. These are what I have come up with called the Big Six, which are 6 deal breakers that people come with that I try to get them to become more open on. So if they don't become open on at least 3 out of the 6, it's how I know I can't take them as a client. So you can be like your own matchmaker, and you can give yourself a self-test to see if you can, become open on 3 out of these 6. So I hope that you take away from this presentation today that you're all of a sudden you're going to become a little bit more open, and you're going to have more options for dating when you walk away today, and feel really empowered. So age. So this could be the number one deal breaker that everybody comes with is very closed on age. So I will tell ladies, men really always want to date younger. So if they can date 10 to 12 years younger, they will. It comes more when maybe the man has reached the 40s and he still wants a family. So, I tell the man who's 40, you can't date another woman who's 40, and they come very close-minded on this. It has to do with, fertility. I tell people, do not be close-minded on this. You don't know if a 30-year-old has fertility problems or a 40-year-old. You don't know. So it's all up to Hashem, to God. And if it's more important, if it's the right person, right values, the closer you date in age, the more things you will have in common, because you're from the same generation. The cultural references, just the way you look at the world is going to be more similar. So I highly encourage that everybody should be dating within the same 5 years. But ladies, just try to be open on age, because men are always looking to date younger. And men, try to be open to maybe even 4 or 5 years older than you, if you can be. Okay. So, so that's with age. Just the more flexibility you have on it, the more options you have. Cultural ethnic background. So a lot of Ashkenazi people come and say, I only want to date Ashkenazi. Sephardic come and say, I only want to date Sephardic. And sometimes it's vice versa. Like they are only attracted to the opposite one with like the different skin tone. And, I can't tell you how many Ashkenazi Americans come and say they want to date like a Gal Gadot, for those who don't know, the Israeli actress who played Wonder Woman. And I'm like, but you don't look like the male Gal Gadot. So she's attracted to the super in shape Sephardic, Israeli guy, version of her. So unless you're going to look like, what's his name? Chris Hemsworth, like he's Caucasian, he's another superhero. That's who she's going to be attracted to. Okay. So like attracts like. So I do tell people, like, yes, it is easier to date in your own cultural ethnic background, because again, you're going to get each other more, have similar, worldview. If you can date the opposite, it's really nice, and opposites can attract, and you can learn from someone else. So be open, but then don't be closed. Like, I am only attracted to Sephardic. You know what I mean? It's really great if you could be open to both. And I'll tell you, like, my marriages that I'm responsible for are Israeli man to a Dutch woman, Israeli man to a Danish woman. Let's see, an Israeli Swedish woman to a French man. So these cultural differences have really been the spice of the relationship, and all the children are like trilingual, and it's very exciting and cool. Oh, and and not to forget the American guy with the Brazilian woman. And you know what? She's only half Jewish from the father's side, and she did a conversion at the AJU, American Jewish University, here in Los Angeles, and he accepts that. And so again, when he first came to me, he was not open to that. So if you can become open, again, your own preference, if you're what you believe in, the halakha, but the more open you can be, the more options you can have. Also, if you're willing to date out of city or state, well, we're going to get there for location. Hang on. So religious observance level, again, if you are modern Orthodox liberal and that's where you're holding, but maybe you could date a little bit more Orthodox. Or maybe you could also date someone who is like conservative, that like eats kosher style and maybe not as observing Shabbat completely. That's up to you. And I won't tell you to like take that one off the list, because it's so personal. Not asking you to change your religious observance level, just how flexible can you be? And if you're Reform, can you go a little bit more conservative? Or maybe, and you could probably also date just culturally Jewish person who's not really keeping any hagim. But you know, a very secular, culturally Jewish probably could not be with anyone in the modern Orthodox range, and I get that. But just look at your range and see if you can go a little bit more or a little bit or a little bit lax. I'll say not less, but just lax. It's going to open up your options, you know, because when we put this harsh label on this is who I am and my level of Judaism, it can really hinder us. Politics, big one. This was not a problem several years ago, but as we know, politics is people's ideology, their values today. So I have people coming every day saying, I'm liberal, only someone liberal Democrat, or I'm conservative Republican, only fellow Republicans. And then I do have moderates, and those are the easiest to match because they can go with either, they see both sides and they're just less judgmental on it. So you can be liberal or conservative and also be a little like be less judgmental, and you know, and maybe it'll be okay. But again, this is the politics and the religion, these are ingrained in you and your ideology. So I'm not trying to change you on it. I'm just seeing like how flexible can you be. So moderates, you have an advantage out there. And okay, location, started to talk about this. The more open you are on location, the better. I'm an international Jewish matchmaker. I really encourage people relocating for each other. I do believe it's possible. I actually do believe that when you only have video and phone to get to know someone, makes the bond stronger because it's all about the connection, the talking. You can talk about everything in life. You know, you can get it all done like within 2 months. You could really get it all done in a month if you talked every day. But in 2 months of talking, you really could know exactly like how many kids ideally would you like where would you like to live, what places are you not open to, how do you think that we'll keep our house, how religious will it be, kashrut, will we be keeping Shabbat, know their humor, their favorite movies and books, and like what their daily routine is like. You can find all that out, and by the time you meet, another rabbi kind of joked like we're all forced to be shomer nagia right now, but then like by the time you meet, you'll almost like be ready to get engaged because you'll have just talked without any physical contact. So it'll all be based on the mind and the heart and not about the physical chemistry. And like you'll be ready to get married because that's why they date like that. You know, that's why more religious date like that with no touching, because as soon as there's physical touch involved, the hormones go off. And the physical intimacy, when it happens too soon, can cloud your judgment if this is really the right partner. So that being said, especially during COVID times, I had people that were video dating and they only lived 2 hours away from each other in Los Angeles, but they, you know, that's what they had to do. So it really doesn't matter where you are. I do believe that opening up location is something everyone can do. And the last one is children. If you do or do not want to have children, that is your value. Don't change that. Don't compromise for anyone, because you will regret it later in life. I think if you gave up your dream of wanting to have children for someone, but be open maybe to someone who's already divorced with kids. Think about if you could do that, as long as the person's willing to add more children to their family, to their home. So the ones to really try to be flexible with and play with on your flexibility are age, cultural ethnic background, location. Those are the three that you can become more open on. You maybe can become, and again, you can maybe give me a little bit on religious observance level and politics. You can maybe, you know, open one of those up. So I hope that you guys will take away from this presentation that you could have more options. You could go right back on your dating apps when this is over, or your match.com, and open up your preferences and just tweak a little bit of those preferences, and you'll see tons of new options. And if anybody needs more support after this presentation, you can email me. I have a waiting list right now, but to get started with matchmaking, I offer, now it's a 2.5-hour consultation, because it really takes that long to like really dig in deep. And I go over your dating profiles with you live if you want to. We screen share, we go over it together. And I'll help you rewrite it live and pick better photos. So that's like a way to get started with matchmaking, and I teach you how to be your own matchmaker, get one-on-one time with me, and you can also practice a virtual date with me, and I can tell you like how you're kind of coming across. And that's it. Thank you, ladies, for having me today.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, so really quickly, just some great resources for everybody. These are some books that Jessica recommended. And I've even read a couple that helped me in my dating process. So I definitely recommend, especially if you're a reader, and even if you're not, because I'm not looking into some of these. So you have I Only Want to Get Married Once by Hannah Levitan, The 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work by John Gottman, Get Real, Get Married, Get Over Your Hurdles and Under the Chuppah by Eliza Ben Shalom, and then Marry Him, The Case for Settling for Mr. Good Enough by Lori Gottlieb. And interestingly enough, these are all Jewish authors. They're in a range of observance, but they all have something really great to say about how to approach a relationship and marriage.
Okay, so that is the first part of tonight. This is a couple of, if you want to catch Jessica's contact information, you can just tell her that you were at this event. She'd be happy to hear from you. Okay, I'm going to stop the share. Okay, so we have a couple of questions that I wanted to go over that people submitted ahead of time. Jessica, I understand you might not have time. Do you have like maybe 5 minutes to answer a question or two?
Yeah. I'll stay on a bit. Yeah.
Okay, so I think something that's kind of, you just talked about some of the areas in the big 6 that you can be flexible on. A question that we got specifically ahead of time was, how do you deal with political red flags? So I'm guessing that means like, if you're really not vibing with someone's political views, like how much of a deal breaker should someone make that?
Yeah. So yeah, as I was saying, politics is really tied to your values and ideology these days. Oh, by the way, Sam, you might want to make the speaker, whoever's talking, like highlighted for the recording.
Let me.
Oh, yeah. Otherwise, I saw in the last recording we stayed like little small squares. Yeah. Okay. Great. So if politics is your value, and you're really strong on either side, you probably do need to be with a like-minded person, because it's going to be, if it's going to like rub you wrong, like I have a client that it's just like everything she sends me that leans more this way, it drives me insane. Like I can't read it. It makes me like so frustrated. So you can't live your life like always angry and frustrated about like what your partner is like texting to you. It's like, not this again. I don't want to read about like what about this. So yeah, it's but there is this one couple, and I forgot, I'm going to Google their name, like when Andrea's talking. They are famous political commentators that are married and apparently happy. And they met from doing the campaigns of opposite candidates, maybe back in the Clinton days. And they're like on opposite ends of the spectrum. What's their name?
I don't remember. I know what you're talking about. Like one is like very conservative, and yeah, they're like opposite ends of the spectrum. I know what you're talking about. Is that like a practical, like realistic goal? I mean,
it's more rare. I think that it was a less politically charged time when they got together. Like it wasn't so extreme to be a liberal or a conservative back then. I don't know if that would have worked today if they were working on the Trump and Biden campaigns, or something. So it worked then. And they also probably really respect each other, and like they probably love each other's brains. Maybe they are turned on because they're sapiosexual about like, oh, like, why do you think that, or like maybe they try to like stump each other, and it's like, I just looked up this data and this, and this is why this is right, and so maybe that's really fun for them. So is that going to be fun for you, or is that going to drive you insane? That's what you have to figure out. And Andrea, I'll let you weigh in.
Sure. I mean, I completely agree with Jessica. I think it really goes back to your values. And I would say it also goes back to, how you want to raise your family, what your family to look like. Like if you are envisioning this, like talking about very liberal topics to your kids all the time, and engaging in liberal activities. So then it's going to be hard to be with someone who doesn't agree with you, because they're just going to be constantly saying something different and against you. And you don't want that kind of a back and forth in your relationship and family life. But if you can, like, there are so many different types of liberals and conservatives. So you might have someone who's more of a fiscal conservative. And so they might be able to be with someone who's a little bit more liberal politically, because They just have a different value system in one aspect of the political system, and they might align more in others. So it's really challenging. You have to ask some of those really good questions to your partner to see how they align with your values. But it can be done. People do it. But I think especially in a politically charged day like now, you just have to be careful, and you have to really make sure you're being true to yourself.
This could be a whole panel. I actually just found 2 articles about couples with the opposite political views and how you make it work. I just posted, and the name of the famous couple is, it's in the article, James Carville and Mary Madeline. So they're in this article from the Huffington Post. So enjoy that.
Cool. Jessica, I want to ask you this question because I remember talking to you about this. How do you know if you're being too selective?
Yeah, so then I think you should do the self-test on yourself, the big 6. If you were closed on all of those, oh, you know what we forgot? I might need to change it to the big 7. So you know what we forgot was physical appearance. Because so physical appearance for women needs to be at least, 5'11". So like if you're being heightist, and men can be a bit ageist. I'm sorry, I'm going there, you guys. I hope you can take it. And so like, can you be with someone like maybe like not a few pounds overweight for their height? Is that okay? And women, can you be with a guy a bit shorter than what you wanted, as long as he's your height or taller? Men and then like women, can you be with someone balding? Men, can you be with someone with maybe more curly hair or glasses? So like these are all superficial, like looks things. So add that to your list. And like I said, if you can be open on 4 out of 7 of those, so we really need to change it to the big 7. Then you're not being too picky. If you are not open to 4 of them, that you got to like figure out which one you can give on, because you're not going to get everything. And really like get open on location then, if you really want it all. There's only so many Jews in the world. I lived in Israel for 5 years. There's plenty of Jews in Israel. So maybe go move there for a while and just have better odds that everyone on your app is Jewish. It's just, so you can use Tinder. It doesn't matter what. Everyone's going to be Jewish. So it doesn't matter. That's why they don't know about JSwipe so much there, because it's the same thing as Tinder. So that's what I would say about and then take a look at your dating history. How often do you dump others, like, or not go past a first or second date because you're like, not for me? And how often do they do it? If it's 50-50, that's healthy. If it's like all you, like 90% you, something else for a self-evaluation test.
Okay, cool. Okay, Jessica, thank you so much for your time tonight. If anyone has questions for her that we didn't get to, you can email us, put you in touch, all that good stuff. So thank you very much, Jessica.
Okay, thank you. So you guys are going to stay on some more and answer some more questions?
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay, cool. Love you guys all. Thank you. I have to go back to work, and keep in touch. I'll just put my email here and website.
Perfect.
And Sam is one of my lovely associates, helping me now in the business. So we will both talk to you soon. Okay. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. Hi. So I can't figure out how to put both of us on Spotlight. Here, what happens if I do this and then I do this? Nope, that did nothing. Okay, moving on. Okay. So Andrea, something I wanted to talk about with you. A lot of people signed up for this class and, didn't ask a specific question, but a lot of people were very open to learning how to be open-minded in their dating. Okay. And I just, I think, there's a mixed bag out there of like, are singles too picky? Are singles not picky enough? And I think, obviously it's a case-by-case situation for everybody. But what is something that you could like give as like encouragement, or what is something that like we could talk about as far as like, how to assess that in yourself? Because, there's especially with all these Facebook groups that are out there now, like there's a lot of discussion about picky versus not picky. And
Yeah, it's a hard topic. I especially have people talk to me about this when they've been dating for, over 5, 10 years and really haven't found somebody who they've been able to be in a long-term relationship in, or felt like they've been getting good matches. They're like, what's going on? People keep saying I'm too picky, but like, these are really important to me. So there is a good level of picky. I will say we just sat here and talked that you need to think about what's best for you. You need to do your deal breakers and your preferences, because you're not going to just match with anybody. If that was the case, we'd all have an easier time doing this dating, and we'd all get married, in a couple of years, if you could just meet somebody and just get married and be done with it. And unfortunately, it's really not that simple. And so I always say step number one is you really have to look at yourself first. A lot of times when we're dating, we really like to look at other people and their characteristics and focus on how they feel and what they're thinking. And we forget about ourselves and what's important to us and if we're growing ourselves. And so whenever you're in a situation where you're trying to feel like, am I really looking for the right person? Am I being open enough? Am I not being picky enough? Because sometimes that's the thing too. You're saying yes to all these dates and you're just having horrible dates. That's a true thing that happens in the single world. And so I think you really need to focus on, what do you want your life to look like 20, 30, 40 years from now? And what are the characteristics in a person that's going to make your life look like that, right? Like we always look at older couples who have been together for 60 plus years and still look so romantically in love. We're like, I just want to be like that. I want to have that. And I'm going to tell you right now that having the hot supermodel in his 20s and 30s, or the supermodel in her 20s and 30s, isn't going to get you to 60 plus years of marriage. There's so much more behind that. You do need somebody who you're attracted to physically. I'm not going to deny that. But you have to make sure that there's something once that physical attraction goes away, and once you're kind of blind to that physical attraction, 20 years of looking at the same person, you might still think they're beautiful, but you probably see them for a lot more, and that's why you think they're beautiful, not because of what they currently look like, or what job they have, or what clothes they wear. And so I find that a lot of times, like when you're talking about that pickiness question before, if you're getting all these options and you're like, wow, this person sounds really great, but this person seems to really match me in so many ways, but is that but always your number one deal breaker? If it is, great, good for you for knowing yourself. If it's not, and it could be more of a preference and you're not being open to trying something with somebody, that's something that you really have to look into and say, hey, is it time to change the way I'm approaching this dating process, and just try 1 or 2 dates. I always say, you don't have to go on a 5-hour date. It's a 1-hour time slot in your life. And if you don't give it a shot, you never know if that could have been the person for you. You don't have to go on date number 2. A lot of people say you do. I do often recommend it. But if you really know by date number 1 that you're just so disgusted with that person that you can't even sit there face to face and have a serious conversation with them, why are you trying date number 2? No, you know already. So, sometimes phone calls can avoid that too. If you don't want to make that extra step to go out, look your best self, be face to face with some person, try a phone call first. Because if you really can't talk over the phone at all, you're probably not going to be able to, talk over coffee either. So I think some of these things, and thinking about that and approaching dating sometimes in a new way can help make the process a little easier.
Andrea, that was like so beautifully said. I kind of want to, everyone's shy, no one's asking me any questions, but I almost feel like that kind of summed it all up.
So actually, Deb Sage just messaged me a question. She says, how many dates to make chemistry happen? Which I think is a great question. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can date somebody and you're like, well, this person seems really interesting. Maybe they, check off some things on my checklist, but like, I'm bored out of my mind on the dates. And how many trials do you give this person? Even though you think they're a lovely human being, you're physically attracted to them. It really happens. It's happened to me before. And you're just like, wow, this guy's great. I really think highly of him, but I can't sit on this date any longer. And so for sure, when you're having that kind of an extreme, I would say, you know, just say no. It's okay to say no sometimes. But at the other side, if you're in this, we talked about in our last class, what if you're kind of in this gray zone, in this neutral, like, they seem great, I'm interested, but like, it's just really at this neutral level. I'm not like jumping to wanting to talking to them every day. I don't necessarily care if they ask me out for a second date or if they say yes to me asking them for a second date. So how do you decide whether you want to give that person a fourth date, a fifth date, a sixth date? And I really think you kind of have to think about, why do you feel neutral? Is it because you don't know enough about that person and you're not asking them the right questions to find out more about them so that you can get more attracted to them emotionally and possibly physically as well? Are you doing the same kind of date over and over again? Are you continuously just going out for dinner? Because that's great for a conversation date, but we need other types of dates too. You know, you have to see a person in an environment that isn't just over a meal, because people act differently when they're in conversations versus when they're out, you know, walking in the park, versus when they're with their families and friends, versus when they're at a movie theater. You know, we all have different behaviors. And so some of those behaviors that you can see in different atmospheres and environments might be those little clues to be like, oh, wow, he really keeps opening the door for me everywhere we go. That's really attractive. Or wow, she keeps saying thank you after every little small gesture I do. I really like that. I've never had that before. And if you don't give yourself that opportunity to find out those small little details about that person, you're going to stay in that neutral friendship zone. That being said, if someone is just more of a friend and really is no chemistry, and you're on date 5 and 6 and it just feels fine, and you don't care if that person messages you in the morning to check in and say hi, or says good night to you, or speaks to you for the next 2 days, probably time to move on and say, you know what, I don't think you're the one for me. Because when you find the one for you, you just get really excited about that person in like little small ways, and the smallest gestures and things get you your juices flowing. And you want that to happen with your future partner. You want that kind of a relationship where you're constantly wanting to be with somebody. And so if you're not feeling that by date 5, 6, especially, you know, a month plus into dating, if you've been on multiple dates in that month, or if you've talked over the phone multiple times, it's probably time to move on.
Time to move on. Okay. I have another question. Did you get any more sent to you? Okay. That was a really great question. Thank you, Deb. So the next question is, this is not necessarily deal breakers related, but let's touch on it anyway.
We'll open it up.
Maybe it is. I tend to make up my mind quickly / I tend to want to rush into a relationship. What are some tips for pacing myself and not coming across as too forward with my partner? Like, you know, sometimes you can get really excited about something.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, like the opposite side of that question. Now, instead of the person who's like feeling neutral and they're trying to feel out the waters, now we have this person who's like diving in. They're like, yes, yes, yes. So my first question is, why yes? Why do you all of a sudden, after speaking with someone for 1 or 2 times, going on a couple of dates, think this person is the end all be all and they're your, you know, Bashert and the person you're meant to marry? Because really, what do you know about that person after just a couple of dates? You know, you really have to investigate that. Sometimes
love at first sight, Andrea.
Sometimes we just kind of get this list in our head and we're like, but the person meets all the things, but the person has this, but the person has that. But there's so much to a person, right? We're talking about someone who's had 20 plus years of life experience. And they've gone through some traumas and through some happy times and changed their wants and needs and what their life looks like. And that's going to continue. And so I always say you need to take a step back and really list out what are the things that are making you so attracted to this person, as well as what are your I don't knows. What haven't you asked this person? What on your deal breakers especially have you not made sure that this person has? So that in the long term, you know, you're not just going on this high of like, wow, this person seems amazing, but you're on this high of like, wow, we really connect. We really want the same things. We're really getting through difficult times together and able to have positive communication where we're both understanding each other. And there are a lot of things that you need to look for in your relationship, right? When you think about your future partner 10 years down the road, how are they reacting when you come home from a bad day and are in a pissy mood and you're just being not the nicest person? Are they going to be not the nicest person back to you? And is that something you want? Are they going to be the person who just lets that go? Are they going to be the person who just like decides to give you your favorite bar of chocolate because they realize that you're in a pissy mood because you're having the bad day? And you need to figure out a way to find those little things that are important to you 20 years down the road that you can't possibly know after a couple of dates. And so, you know, take a step back and be like, wow, I'm so happy that this person seems to have good potential for me. I should really be on top of the relationship and really make use of our time together to find out more about him or her and how I can try to make sure that any red or green flags that I might be looking for become apparent in our dating process. Because I guarantee you, if you just, you know, met somebody for 2 dates and you got married afterwards just because you thought they were the best thing you've met, at the end of the day, you wouldn't really have much to go on because you only met them 1 or 2 times. So, you know, you have to really take a step back and ask yourself, what are the things that are important to me? What do I like about this person? And most importantly, what don't I know yet and why should I slow down?
Wow, okay. I will remember that, Andrea. Is there anything, I think we're gonna wrap up this part and go into the discussion.
That'd be great.
I just wanted to thank everyone for being here and thank you, Andrea, for being so eloquent. And we have another class coming up on Sunday, Magnetize Your New Year. I will put the link on how to register for that soon. But I'm gonna stop the recording.